UAC Rig 3.0 is now available. This is a free update. If you didn't get a new link sent to you, check your spam. If you still can't find it, just email me directly using the address that you purchased from and I'll get you set up. This update is a big one. Lots of great stuff has been added. We have 5 new rig types shown in this little demo. A single wheel rig. This was used for the rolling wheel here at the front and the sci-fi vehicle at the back. A 2-wheel inline rig. This was used for the Vespa and the scooter. A 2-wheel parallel rig. This was used for the Segway on the far left and the red hoverboard at the front. A 3-wheel in a 1-2 layout. This was used for the yellow Reliant Robin. And finally, a 3-wheel rig in a 2-1 layout, which was used for the pink concept car. Lots of new functional body parts have also been added. Automatic wipers for the front and rear, windows, seats, wing mirrors, a sunroof, rear view mirror, fuel flap, glove box, console lid, and visors. The UI has also been improved. We now have an exporter, custom dimension presets, and some new animation tools. So let's go over everything in detail. For this video, I'm using Maya 2025.1. The UAC Rig works in all versions of Maya. To install the update, just remove your old version, then drag the install.mel file into your viewport and the tool will appear on your active shelf. Starting with the UI, tooltips are added all over the place. Just hover your cursor over the button that you're not sure about and the information will pop up. Documentation has also been updated. You can access that by clicking the TrickBox logo in the corner. The UI will also remember all of your last settings. It saves this information to a file that can be accessed by control clicking the same button. You can manually edit this if you need to. The mode button now changes what is displayed in the UI as well as what controls are seen on the actual rig. In setup mode, the UI will only show what's needed for rigging your vehicle. In animation mode, you're left with just the things you need to animate with. Curve path, terrain functions, and these new utility buttons. Rig options are now pop-up buttons. You can set your wheel count and tire deformation divisions here. Tire options have not changed, but for the wheel count, there are 5 new rig types that we mentioned at the start. So let's go over each of them. The one wheel. This one has a simple looking proxy mesh. The rig is pretty straightforward. It's about as simple as you can get for setup. You're going to snap the dimension control to the center of the wheel. The width is automatic on this one. All you need to adjust is the tire wall attribute. Then connect your mesh. Set these bits to the wheel, tire, and you're good to go. You can reshape some controls if you want to. Give it a quick test. Drives well. Steering, you can tip it. The body control will still have influence over the wheel, which you can adjust with all the usual attributes. And the tire pressure is doing the thing it does best. Next one, this is the 2-wheeler inline rig. Here's the proxy. We would use this for a bike, scooter, or in this case, we're using a Vespa. Again, really simple setup. Just doing the same thing with 2 wheels now. Just snap to the center. Same thing again. Here. Tire width is automatic for this one too. Just set the tire wall. I set both at the same time. The wheels should be identical. Yeah. I'll hide this mirror for now. The handlebars and the wheel guard would connect as a steering wheel. If we control click the steering wheel button, this will show the align control for the steering. So that's a little shortcut that's been added. You can move this into place, probably somewhere here where the handlebars pivot. Next thing you do is slightly different to normal. This uses a new control, the caster angle control. This is exactly the same as setting it on the tuner control. It's just a bit more convenient on things with handlebars. Just align this caster control to the steering angle, connect the handlebars and the wheel guard as the steering wheel. We're going to connect the body bits. The motor can just be added as a caliper. This allows it to follow the wheel but not spin with it. Same thing for this front part here. The wheels on this model are a little bit odd. We've got part of the inner wheel that's modeled into the tire. This part here can be the wheel and this part will be fine as the tire. That's the mesh connected. You can now hide the caster angle control here. It's just located on the root control. Steering works, but we will need to set the steering wheel ratio to 1:1 so it matches up correctly. This model has some ambient occlusion baked into the texture, which is a bit unfortunate. Alright, all we do now is just reshape the controls if you want. We can test it. It steers. It drives. The body works. Tire pressure is working well. And you can adjust the attributes here needed to modify how the wheels and body react to each other as you would normally. Bike chains, springs or cables, they'll need to be rigged separately and then just attached to the main rig. Next one, the 2-wheel parallel. Use this for a Segway, hoverboard, maybe even a wheelie bin if that's what you're into. I'm going to use it for a hoverboard here. Something this small, I would scale down the rig using the global scale. I'm not sure I have a reliable snap point here, so I'm going to create a quick temp fill mesh, give it a poke, snap the wheel dimension control, front view, set the tire width, move it in a bit, side view, we're going to set the tire sidewall, connect up the mesh, tire, wheel, the rest is all body, fit the controls, and test it. It drives fine. The body works. Tire pressure is working well. It tips. And if you want to use oversteer on something with fixed wheels like this, you would need to set the oversteer traction to 0. And off you pop. Up next, the 3-wheel 1-2. Anything with a single central wheel at the front will work for this one, so we're going to use a Robin Reliant. Nothing out of the ordinary going on here either. Just snap your wheels. Tire width is automatic for the front. Set your tire wall. These wheels are merged up, so I'm just going to add them as tires. The rest is body for now. You can set the caster with the caster control if you want, or you can use the tuner instead. This is a pretty extreme caster value here, obviously too much, but you get the idea. Oversteer, understeer, side tip, forward tipped, everything else is working as usual. Last rig, the 3-wheel 2-1, which is the opposite of the previous one. Again, very intuitive and what you'd expect. I'm not even going to show the setup. It drives, tires pump, body works, it steers, moving on. The proxy mesh for all rigs now have low resolution tire deformations. We have dimension preset buttons. The one on the right will load in previously saved dimension control settings like this. The controls that are used are the ones visible in setup mode. To save the preset, just hit the arrow down button on the left, enter a name for the preset. I'm just going to call this one temp. Now if I move the dimension controls, mess it up a bit, and reload the one I just saved, it pops back to where we had it. This folder button opens the preset location. Here you can rename, copy, or delete preset files as needed. Here are the presets being loaded on the 2-wheel inline rig. Presets work on all rigs, the 1-wheel all the way up to the 10-wheeler. Now let's look at the new connection buttons. This row you know well, but down here we have a new row, and these ones have a little triangle icon on the side. And this means they will open a pop-up, allowing you to connect your various mesh parts to different components of the rig. The first one opens options for the bonnet, boot, sunroof, and fuel flap. If you control click these buttons, just like the steering wheel, it will show the associated control for you. You just place the control at the pivot point. So here for the fuel flap, you can flip the side with the side attribute if you need to. The boot was in the last update. The sunroof, if it opens at an angle, make sure to place a good pivot point. If it just slides, then anywhere close will be fine. I did save everything as a preset earlier, so I won't waste your time being too precise. Next one is doors, front, middle, and back. You can control click the door button, place the pivot. Windows are part of the door control. There's no specific control to align. You would just add the glass. It's all part of the same control. We'll tweak these a little bit later. Seats are also laid out in the same rows. No need to pick the sides. Seats are broken into 3 parts. We've got the headrest, the back, and the base. You can control click this to move the control to the reclining pivot of your seat, and the same for the headrest pivot. Next is wipers. For these, the buttons are laid out as if you're looking directly at your windshield from the front. So wiper blade and wiper, which match with your blade and wiper. Same thing as the other side, Last buttons are for the rear wiper, which we don't have on this truck, but I will show it a bit later. Control click the front wipers and place the controls. The pivots for these need to be pretty precise for them to work right. So, you know, a little bit of time might be needed to set these up, but it will be worth it. As I get into a good spot here, just know that your model was likely not built with wiper motion in mind, right? So we're going to be doing our best here to work around that. But we can still get really nice results regardless of that. The white control goes at the blade pivot point. This is for the side-to-side dragging effect of the rubber over the windshield as it wipes. When you set your wiper pivot, the idea is to have the Z rotation not to crash into the windshield or stray too far away, right? Changing the Y-axis a bit should be enough just to get it close. We can fine-tune this with some attributes later. A little trick, you can move the blade pivot down to the glass as a bit of a helper. Now when you rotate the wiper on Z so it's roughly at its maximum range, now you can use the Y-axis to rotate it so that the circle is floating slightly above the glass. When it is close, just rotate it on the Z-axis only back to its default position and move the blade back to a good pivot spot. And then you're going to do the same for the other wiper. I will skip this for now because I already have it saved in a preset. Let's move on to the next one. This contains the wing mirror glass, the wing mirror mount, the rear view mirror, visors, glove box, and console lid. So let's hide the door again. We're going to control click to show the controls. We can move the pivots for the visor up here if you have them. Same for the glove box. Console lid. For the rear view mirror, you're just going to rotate it to match the orientation of the glass. Place it slightly behind or at an obvious pivot point on the model. The side view mirrors have a bit more going on. You're going to control click the button to show the two controls. The yellow one is for the mount pivot. This should be pretty obvious on the model. And the white one for the glass. Again, rotate this to match the orientation of the glass and move it slightly behind and into the center. That covers all the new setup controls. Let me load a preset of them positioned properly and we can connect the mesh and take a look at everything working. I have everything grouped up here to make it easier. I'll start with the back. I'm going to set that as the boot. All the body parts, I'm just going to use this group and connect it to the body. It will look inside and connect everything inside the group. The seats, if I hide the doors, we can see what's going on. We want the seat base, it slides on, and the cushion. This will be the button at the bottom. The seat back will be the middle button. And the headrest will be the top. Wheels, calipers, tires, and let's do the wipers. Let's rotate to the front of the windshield. Really helps to name these parts really well. Right, we're going to use the screen left blade to the left blade button, the screen left wiper to the left wiper button, and the other side, let's do the blade first, the screen right blade to the right blade button, the screen right wiper to the right wiper button. So that's how they match up. Console lid, the fuel flap, a couple of bits for the bonnet, rear view mirror parts, sunroof, and the steering wheel. Unhide the doors, wing mirrors. The glass is the one with the white glass area on the icon. And the rest is for the other one, the wing mirror mount. Last group, doors and windows. So let's grab the door parts first and set those to the front door button. And finally the glass, we're just going to set to the front window. Let's take a look at the new parts in animation mode. The window open attribute, it brings the window down. And the other two attributes here, angle influence and side influence, these will allow you to change the angle of the window as it opens. If I reset them, you'll see that the window just goes straight up and down on Y. Not really what we want. But if you open it almost all of the way and adjust the angle influence as much as you can to put it in a good spot without having the glass penetrate the front of the door, then use the side influence to move the window into place the rest of the way, you should get a pretty good result. This takes a little bit of finessing sometimes, but it's definitely worth it. The wing mirrors can retract and the mirror can tilt to the sides and also up and down. Both sides move together by default, but you can disable this connection by turning off the follow other side attribute. There's also an important attribute on the wing mirror align control, follow door. Some mirrors will be mounted on a door like this and some mounted directly to the body. Be sure to set this attribute correctly before you position your control. Also, if it's mounted on a door, position your door first before positioning the mirror. The sunroof is just a transform. You can slide it or rotate it depending on your needs. The back opens, you've seen that one before. The fuel flap as well. The seats recline. They slide. The headrest extends. This would work a lot better if you had those two little metal rods modeled in, but in this case you could still use it for a tilt. Wipers have several animations built in. You can set the delay like you would on real wipers. You won't see keys on the timeline, but when you hit play, the wipers will move back and forth. I see the left side is crashing a bit. We'll fix that in a moment with some of these attributes that we have here. The wiper blade is tilting with the motion. It's subtle, but you can adjust that tilting or drag effect with the auto blade tilt attributes. The ones above this adjust the overall speed, range, and offset of the whole animation. The auto wiper range, this just means the maximum reach of the wiper at the end of the wiper animation. So if I increase that, the wiper rotation just extends further. The auto wiper offset, this shifts the animation start point. So here I'm just shifting the animation to about the middle for frame 1. Back to the wiper crashing. To fix something like this, we're just going to move the timeline to the frame where you can see the crash. Could be a quick adjustment to the auto blade tilt, but in this case it's not. So we would use these alignment controls to fine tune the end point of the motion. So the issue is on the screen left wiper. So I will select the other wiper control. There is an extra follow other side attribute that will disable this wiper from moving with the main wiper, just like the wing mirrors that we looked at earlier. If we turn that off, you're able to set everything independently from the main wiper. I'm going to leave it on because I want them to move together, but just know that the alignment attributes, the ones that we're going to use to fix these crashing issues, they're always independent. So for here, we could raise the entire wiper as the motion hits its max range. This is probably good for a really extreme issue. We don't need that for this one. For this one, we can just use the roll, adjust that slightly, and that will do the job. It's not very common to have wipers like this, but you can easily move the wipers around as needed or flip the sides using the side flip attribute on the setup control. Each wiper has this attribute, including the rear. The rear also has a unique attribute called follow boot. So if you have a door or a hatchback, the wiper would need to move with it. So remember to place your boot pivot first, set the follow boot attribute, and then place your wiper. The rear wiper animation control has a follow other side attribute, so it moves with the front wipers. It also has its own set of animations, just like the others. I just noticed an issue on this one with the range. We can just pull that back a little bit to correct it. This is a really good example of the blade tilt. You can see it dragging back and forth as the wiper brushes the glass. You can adjust the blade range separately, push it further or reduce it. And these last attributes here, which are on every wiper, they are just manual animation controls for if you wanted to key your own motion. Rear view mirrors are set up on this vehicle. Notice they are body mounted this time. On the setup control, follow door was turned off. This square button here will just select all of the mesh that is connected to the UAC rig. So parented, constrained, or skinned, it will select them all. Here is another example of the caster control being used to align the steering on this scooter. But I loaded this to show off the new animation utilities. If I set a few shitty keys here, that looks beautiful. I can always just remove the animation and also reset the controls back to the pose that we set it up with. This is just affecting the animation controls. These buttons are just selection buttons. You can easily select the root, tuner, drive, body, or steering wheel controls. The wheels are here too, but they work slightly different. Each time you click the button, it will cycle through your wheels, and you can hold Control click to select them all at once. The rotation tick button will display a little white triangle on each wheel. This will allow you to clearly see the wheel rotation. This animation here has a vehicle driving on a bank. It's tilted on its side. You already know you can achieve this with the path spin attribute, but you can now also adjust this using the spin path directly, which gives you way more control. You can move or scale it as a whole, or unlock the CVs with the little CV lock icon and change the shape of the path to modify how your vehicle shifts from side to side, how it leans. This is really great for bikes too. If you use it unlocked like this, leave it unlocked, because if you click it again, it will reset everything to the lock position, which puts everything back to the shape of your original curve. Vehicle speed can be checked at any time. Click the speedometer icon and the current speed will be displayed in kilometers per hour and miles per hour down here in the output bar. It's going about 34 here, but if we move this a bit further along down the timeline and check it again, maybe here, it's going about 28. And if we look at the end, it's now down to 6 miles an hour as it rolls into a stop. Grip is pretty interesting. This button will generate individual curve paths for each wheel and bake down the wheel motion to the new grip attributes that are located on each wheel. The curves are stored in a grip curve group. Each curve is the specific path that each wheel took during your animation. So drive motion is then recalculated per wheel instead of relying on the calculations from the single central curve. This gives a much more accurate result, especially on those tight curve paths. Use this when you're happy with your final animation. Control-Shift-Click will remove this animation and return the wheels to their normal state. You can also just hit Control-Click, and this will generate the curves only, in case maybe you wanted to use those curves for generating tire skids, something like that. When you hit the button, it will generate it only for the selected wheels. If nothing's selected, it will run the process on all wheels. Here's a little animation of an SUV hitting the brakes. To stop the wheels, all we had before was just turning off the drive spin multiplier on each wheel. You would essentially be rewinding the wheels back to a 0 value, which is not really that useful for braking or skidding, and it definitely would not work well with motion blur. So I added brake and brake slip attributes to the drive control. The brake attribute overrides all input motion and resets or rewinds the wheel to the last full rotation only. So it won't rewind forever like it did on the drive spin multiplier, just the last full rotation. The brake slip attribute then allows you to add movement within that last rotation. On this animation, if we look at the skid, we are just braking over a few frames and then using the brake slip to blend to a nice motion blur friendly stop. If I remove the slip value, you can see the tick rotating backwards to the reset position as the wheel comes to a stop. So all we do is take a visual note of roughly where the tick is, when we start braking, and then when the wheel comes to a complete stop, we just adjust this reset position here with the brake slip attribute and rotate the wheel to where the tick was before. maybe add a little bit more motion because we're still moving forward. Somewhere here at about 300 degrees, you just key it in. And we have a nice brake effect. One quick thing to note, if you set up your references correctly, you can switch out your vehicles at any time and reuse your animations. This works for all rig types. Here's the three-wheeler using the same animation. And here it is using a single wheel rig. Pretty useful. The last thing I want to go over is the output options. For this, I'm going to export a Datsun as a skeletal mesh for something like Unreal. So clicking this will bring up a new window. You're going to save your work before exporting. Please do this. Exporting will import your references. It removes the control rig. So once you export, the UI will not detect the rig. So really save your work before exporting. I'm going to name the file Datsun SK. This button is your location picker. I'm just going to use a folder on my D drive, and this button will open up your export location folder in Explorer. You can also set this stuff up in the tool settings file. Control click the TrickBox logo, make some changes, save it. Now the pop-up has your changes. For exporting the skeletal mesh, we don't want the animation, so turn off include motion. We do need the mesh, so definitely turn on include mesh. This will include the joints and the skin data, so make sure you use the skin method when setting up your vehicle if you're planning to export to Unreal. If you want to include the chassis model, just make sure it is visible when you export. If you have it turned off, it will not be included in the export. For skeleton cleanup, each rig contains quite a few extra body component joints now. So we've got like the sunroof, wing mirrors, and all the parts we went over here. They each have their own joint, but if you did not use them, there is no need for keeping them around. This option will remove any UAC Rig joint that has no skin data applied to it. Any custom joint that you add in manually, those will be kept. I'm going to hit export. We're going to confirm it. Give it a sec. This is what we're left with. And the FBX file lives here, where we set it on the exporter. Mesh, joints, chassis, the skin data is intact. For exporting animations to Unreal, give it a good name, same location. We just need to turn on include motion this time and turn off include mesh. Skeleton cleanup can stay on. Hit export. Everything gets baked down to joints. It looks like this. And the file was exported to the same folder. Let me delete this in the scene and load in the FBX files. Here is the skeletal mesh. And let's add the animation. And everything works fine. This is the scene used for the shot at the start of the video. It has all of the new rig types animating together. If you need to export multiple animated vehicles at once, it does not matter which vehicle is active. Just give it a general name. It exports a file per vehicle and it will include the namespace in the file name that you entered here in the text box. Turn on both include motion and include mesh and use the apply to all UAC rigs button. This will bake everything down at once, but I do recommend using the pause viewport button. This will allow the viewport not to respond and speed up your bake. Export. I will speed up the video. All of the files will land in the same export location we chose earlier. If I bring all of these into a clean scene, everything is baked down and animating correctly. One extra thing to mention, renaming or rearranging the hierarchy of any UAC Rig part is now possible without breaking the tool. I completely changed how the UAC Rig part detection works. This still has limitations if you're using references, obviously, but you can certainly rename and rearrange things in the source files if you need to. There were also a number of bug fixes that were addressed in this update. the odd tire deformation issue, and some general performance stuff. That brings us to the end of this video. The UAC Rig has grown quite a bit since its first release, so I'll be putting together a whole new set of tutorials. The current ones are a little bit out of date, so keep an eye open for those. Thanks for watching, and a massive thank you for all of the great feedback and requests. They are absolutely brilliant. I'll see you in the next video.